your message, your pitch from a month and a half ago might be completely irrelevant today, at least the storytelling piece of it. And that's what I really want to examine today and see how we can pop it up and how we can give VCs now more than ever the things that are important to them. So, sorry, let me try to get this full screen. Okay, speaking of Lego, those of you that have ever been in my workshop, I think Lego is the perfect example of where it's a creative expression where flexibility meets structure. So you can build anything you want with Lego. You can build entire Lego lands and houses and things made of Lego, but you have to stick to the structure. Even a very, very young child can figure it out and use it and be able to manage and maneuver it. So once we have a structure for building a message, whatever it is, whether it's your investor pitch, your sales pitch, product updates or anything, you can then be free to be as creative as you want to be with your content. And I want to give you pieces of that Lego structure today. The first thing you want to do is you want to chunk your information into 4 sections, all right? And there's a reason for the 4, and it's really about our poor brains. So in thinking about the way we take in information, if anybody has young kids, and I have a first grader and a preschooler, and the way they learn is just mind-boggling. Even now with the remote learning, I see my 7-year-old taking in math and processing it and doing it, and it's just astounding. I think if any of us have tried to learn something new in the past few years, it's a little bit of a different experience since we've been out of school for a while, because our hard drives are very full. Our operating systems are like Windows 19 blah blah, or even DOS. And not only that, as people in general, and Israelis in specific, and I am Israeli, don't let my accent mislead you. I can talk like this also. Everybody made fun of me for many years. So I was always the Amerikakit when I made Aliyah, but then came the time where the English really came in handy. So if we've tried to learn something new in the past few years, oftentimes you might have encountered a bit of argumentativeness with a teacher of like, no, that's not right, or I don't agree with that, because we have opinions, we know things. So we either, when we learn something new, we will either fight or flight, either try to go at it with them or just ignore it because it's not relevant. So there's a formula for adult learning called the principle of chunking, and it's 5 + 2 - 2. So anywhere between 3 to 7 chunks of information is about all our brain is capable of taking. Notice that license plates are usually divided 3, 3, 4. Phone numbers here. Israel's the only place that the ID numbers, the army numbers, and everything is just like one string of numbers. So it's interesting the different way, and I'm sure whoever here really still remembers their number from the army. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there. So we want to be able to chunk the information. 4 being the optimal, 3 can work too. Now, how does that chunking work? Imagine if I were to start off and say, hi, today we're going to be talking about fresh fruit. We'll talk about apples, mangoes, pomegranates, peaches, plums, grapes, watermelon, honeydew, and guava. What do you remember from that list? Probably guava. Or your favorite fruit that stood out there. By the way, guys, I didn't say this, but if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything, please pop them in the chat. I will be checking in with Sharon from time to time and from time to time to see if there's any questions. So I want this to be a dialogue of sorts. So it's very hard to remember anything from that string. I don't even remember what I said. But if I were to start off saying, hi, everyone, today we're going to be talking about fresh fruit. We'll start off with citrus fruit, including lemons, oranges, and grapefruit. Then we'll go to tree fruit, apples, pears, and peaches. And finally, we will finish with tropical fruit, coconuts, mangoes, and guava. A little bit easier to remember there? Yes. And that's what our brain does all day long. Take in information, file it away. Take in information, file it away. Something new comes in, don't quite know how to file it. That's the fight or flight. It's very hard to do that. Give people what their brains are used to doing, filing information. And with investors, they're used to seeing things a certain way. They may say they don't like it this way. Believe me, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. I've seen it happen again and again. So how do we chunk our investor deck? Well, I already did the chunking for you. Now, you're going to say, oh, we already know this isn't anything new. Exactly. It's not anything new. This has been around for thousands and thousands of years. We've seen it in Greek tragedies, in Shakespeare, in Molière, Chekhov, even the Bible. Stories are built this way, starting off with the need, the problem, the challenge. Then the hero emerges with a solution and how it works and showing that. Then the plan of execution, how that's going to happen, and how do we move forward with it and what happens afterwards? What's our projection? So it's age old, it's thousands of years, but our brains are hardwired for this kind of storytelling. So if we can chunk it in this flow, we answer a lot of questions before they even arise. And then instead of thinking about the questions and not listening to us, they're with us because it's like, oh, okay, that's what I needed to hear at this juncture in time. She's got me. So we want to engage them every step of the way. And when we're working remote, it's more important than ever to keep the engagement going. Yesterday, I gave a remote presentation training to Tabula. And the VP that had organized it at the end, he said, I have a confession to make. He said, I had a last minute presentation I was asked to prepare, so I was going to kind of listen with half an ear and work on the presentation, but you must be really good at what you're teaching because you kept drawing me back in and I couldn't do my work. So no, thank you. I'm behind on that. So I was very happy with that kind of thing. So you want to be so captivating with your message that they're not drawn out to do email or to check anything else. They're totally absorbed into listening to your story. That's your goal. So there's three things that investors are constantly listening for, and I want every single slide to speak to one or more of these: credibility, likability, and momentum. Okay, credibility, how much street cred, how much experience do you and your team have? Likability, being mentions, that comes through with our smile, with our ability to listen and be coachable. And momentum, how far have you gotten with your traction, with your product? And we'll go into that because that's probably the most important thing. But when we talk about likability, we're going to focus less on that today because that's, you know, our natural personalities. But I was shocked when investors, and I was at a meeting, and they said, if a founder, if a CEO who's giving the presentation, when we get to the end with the feedback, is not sitting there with a notebook, taking notes, that's a big no, it's a big signal. And there was a bunch of senior partners in the room that totally agreed with that. And they said, not right, taking notes on your phone, not taking notes on your computer, not having your partner take notes, you taking notes. They said, you could be sitting there scribbling and throw it away at the end. We don't care, but it shows coachability. It shows that you're open. It shows that you're taking it. So a lot of it is about signaling. And because they're going to be looking past just, okay, you know, it's almost like a marriage. Some marriages don't last as long as investor relationships do. So we want to see, is this person open for feedback? What's going to happen when times are good and we want to celebrate? And what's going to happen when times are not great, like now? Is this going to be someone that's going to be workable? So keep these three things in mind as we go. Then you're going to introduce yourself. The obvious, you want to introduce yourself and your team, but I want you to start off in a minute. We'll talk about with your why, with your vision statement. Now, if you have significant traction or achievements, do say those at the beginning. Next slide, we'll dive into that. But unless your team looks like that, or you have significant experience, you don't need to start with the team. If you have a team of grizzled vets, serial entrepreneurs, people with achievements, people that have done things, you have a serious advisory board, definitely put them up. So that's always the question, does it add to your credibility or not? So I have sat through meetings where on slide 18, suddenly a startup will say, oh yeah, we just closed a deal with Johnson & Johnson and we have 20K MRR and we have a pipeline worth 1.5 million for this year. And the investors are like, what? You know, why would you wait that long to share good news. They know. Now, by the way, you're going to see a lot of quotes from a lot of VC partners. I'm not at liberty to disclose their names, but these are senior partners from very respected firms. So this is coming, a lot of it, straight from them. It just enhances things that I've been saying for years and a lot that I learned sitting in these meetings. So don't wait for good news, especially if you're raising Series A, okay? Start with what I call the brag slide. Please don't call it the brag slide, okay? It doesn't sound good. That's our little code word. So how far have you gotten? Is your ARR, MRR, or revenue to date impressive? Your growth, month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year. They like to see those 20%, 40% growths. And engagement, stickiness. What are the, excuse me 1 second, honey, I'm giving a webinar. I really can't talk to you right now. Thank you though. See, even happens to all of us.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Of course you can.
I am guessing, and people will probably tell me if I'm right, most people here are medical device or medical related companies, and most will not be in these stages. Like not a lot of sales growth is, you know, not really the stage that will be in this competition. So some people might disagree, and let me know if I'm way off. But to this, you might know that.
100%. But whatever you have is you can put up front. Now, if you're raising Series A, even for a medical device, you have some traction. You've made it through preclinical, or you're on inhuman device, you're on the trials that you're doing. You've made progress with your IP. You've made progress with regulatory. So if it's significant, put it up front. If not, you can wait for later. There's another placeholder for talking about your current status and traction. I want you to start if you have something wow to give. And I know that there are several startups here that are not medical devices, and there's a good blend. So I'm really glad you brought that up. So obviously, medical devices, pharma takes longer to reach that traction. Nevertheless, if you've made some serious progress, I mean, who would have thought that some of the companies that were working on solutions that are now COVID related would suddenly have such a boost? I mean, some good things can come out of this horrible situation. So again, wherever you are, but don't feel the need to put it up front unless it's wow, okay? I hope that addressed that. While we're on questions, any other questions? Okay, by the way, when you're giving a remote meeting, you want to take a moment and breathe and give people at least like a 5-second beat to respond. Sometimes it takes them a minute to unmute, it takes them a minute to find their bearings, and we want to give people a little bit of bandwidth. Don't be scared of that silence.
I just also want to remind our audience that we have the Q&A box, so if you don't feel comfortable to ask a question out loud, like Tomer just did, you can always send us a question through the chat, and Donna and myself will look that through. As for the remarks for medical related companies, it's true, looking at the list of people that we have, the majority of the companies that we have are in this sphere. But we have some people that are, working in other areas that are also part of this discussion. But yes, most of our companies in these sessions are from the medical or health tech areas.
Okay, so duly noted. Okay, anything that could grab them and make them sit up and listen. Don't wait to say that. Now, I've seen investors that were not sold on a certain arena or sold on a certain market, but if they saw numbers, it turned them into believers. So if you have clients or potential clients or partners across multiple industries, you've got numbers to prove it, then that can make them believers. Now let's talk about your vision or your why, your North Star. If you haven't seen a Simon Sinek talk, highly recommend it. He's a great speaker, and he talks a lot about the why. People don't buy what you do, they buy the why that you do it. So there's 3 different layers that's going to be in your investor presentation: the why, the what, and the how. The why, I always encourage people, think 5 years from now, or if it's a medical device, maybe a little bit longer than that, but once you're out in market and you're making a significant difference in people's lives, what will you have achieved? Why are you there? What's your purpose? The what you're doing and the how you do it come a little bit later. So just to give you some inspiration, let's look at some, I looked through a bunch of vision statements and mission statements, and I gathered some pretty big companies. So Microsoft to enable people and businesses through the world to realize their full potential. And so that says nothing about the software or the cloud or anything, but that's what they're enabling at the end of the day. Whether we like Microsoft or not, I think we can agree that it's a huge enabling tool. Facebook to enable, to give people the power to share and make the world more open and connected. I think that during the pandemic, that's been very, very clear that it's about community, it's about connection. Intuit's actually surprised me. I really like it, to improve its customers' financial lives so profoundly they couldn't imagine going back to the old way. That's stickiness, that's addictive. And if investors hear a customer of yours or a client of yours saying, I can't imagine life without them, that means they're sticking around. That's a very good signal to them because they want to see customer stickiness. Okay, so before we move on to the problem, anyone have any questions to ask about the why? Yes, we have a question. Medical related companies, the why usually involved in terms that need to be built up. Absolutely. So like I said, it might be 5-10 years from now, but if you look at a medical device, like let's look at the Da Vinci robot. What is the vision statement there? I don't know what their exact vision, but what have they enabled? They have enabled a revolution in surgery where it can be done, microsurgery done with precision, completely frictionless and hands-free. The doctor doesn't have to be in the room. So they might, in their first iterations of it, have not achieved that. But that's setting out to completely have hands-off surgery. I can imagine it was something like that. That's a good example of a device that took a while. So I suggest, Carmit, that this first slide be a brag slide if you have significant traction to talk of. If you're raising round A, you need to really have your achievements front and center. If you're still early, you're still starting off, you don't really have any traction to speak of, any impressive logos to put there, then don't put it at the beginning. And by the way, only put logos of people that are actually you're working with, that they're paid clients, or that you specifically say piloting with our design partners, because if they think at first glance, they see, they're like, oh my gosh, Microsoft is a client. Oh no, they're someone we think we should work with. I've seen that happen. That really kills your credibility. So don't do that. Any other questions? Feel free to keep putting them up there. So then we get to the first bucket. So all this has been like the pre-talk, the introductions. Now we get to the act one of your play, the problem, the need, the solution. Now there's always two ways, probably more, we all have different opinions to do this. You either want to make them feel the pain, that's the stick, or see the light, the carrot. So either protecting themselves from something bad happening, or bringing something amazing into their lives that they never even thought that could be possible. It's not that one way is better than the other, it's just what's more impactful for your specific audience, what's going to make more of an impact. You could sometimes choose either way to do it. It might be different if you're talking to a specific customer or if you're talking to an investor, so you might choose a different thing. But either way, I want you to try to turn that problem or opportunity into a story, because it's much more impactful. Now, Mark Twain said, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. So I want to preface this and issue a disclaimer. I'm not telling you to lie. I would never do that. But there are different ways to tell stories that are more captivating. Stories are a way of resonating. So our whole structure is a story, but then we can weave anecdotes and stories into it to illustrate points. And this is our first point of the story. This could be your founder story, how you even came up with the idea. Maybe you had a personal stake in it. Maybe it's a story about a breach like Equifax. Maybe it's a story of of your partner. Maybe it's the story of someone you care about, and maybe it's a story that you've embellished a bit. But if you can show that, it's very hard to argue with it. For example, a few years ago, I was working with a company, and they were very technical. They had been in one of the elite intelligence units, and they kept saying it's computer vision enabled, data driven, machine learning, blah, 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 blah. And I couldn't understand what they were doing, and I kept peeling away the layers. And one of the founders then said, you know, it was like this one time when we were in Tokyo, and I said, oh, you came up with the idea in Tokyo? That's kind of cool. I'm always looking for the threads to start the story with. And they're like, no, we told you it's computer learning and machine deep learning enabled. And I said, okay, guys, you came up with the idea in Tokyo. And they kind of looked at me funny, like, you know, engineers are not going to tell stories that are not 100% accurate, of course. But I said, doesn't it sound sexier to say something like, we were roaming the streets of Tokyo, feeling lost in translation, looking at all these beautiful buildings, having absolutely no clue what we were looking at. And we thought, wouldn't it be neat if I could just take my phone, snap a picture, and right away have image recognition of what the building was, the history of it, what's around, without having to ask anyone or read a single sign in English? Now, do you think investors ask them to see their passports and see when the stamp to Tokyo was and when they founded the company? Probably not, but that's not important whether they came up with it, because what resonates is, I think we've all probably traveled to a country where we didn't read the language and we felt lost in translation. And now they've pivoted it later on to VR, AR, and enabling it in cars so that, you know, as you drive, you can see different points of interest. So it's really not about the exact date that everything happened. It's getting the story across fast, powerful, meaningful, and choosing the timely story. Because our brains are really hardwired for stories. This is my first grader when she was 2. She would take stacks of books and kind of surround herself with it as if she was reading. And today she's reading chapter books in the same way. She devours them. And her little sister is definitely following in her footsteps. She'll just sit there looking through books, even though she can't read yet. Kids can listen to the same story again and again and again, much to our chagrin. I'm sure you guys have hidden a few books that you can't stand reading anymore or listening to anymore. But the thing is, we kind of lose touch with that along the way, and we feel the need to be very businessy. But stories actually connect, resonate, persuade. They involve all parts of our brain, which keeps people with us, which causes the nod to happen, because every time we hear a story, there's a part in our brain called the insula, and it's searching for reference points. It's searching for identification. So we're searching for stories that, oh yeah, that reminds me of the time that I did this, or, oh, that makes me feel sad, that makes me feel anger, that makes me feel, you know, all kinds of things. So we really want to access those parts. And that's a part where we also can sync up with people's brains, and that's when persuasion comes in. Questions as we go? I just want to remind you, please feel free to pop those in there. So this is a partial list of villains that people tackle. If you're a lot of medical devices, you have a much more specific villain. You're saving people's lives, you're improving processes, you're taking things that haven't worked and making them better. So I work with a lot of medical device companies, and to me, it's always the most profound. Don't tell the other startups I said this, because this is truly making an impact on our lives, our health. So it's so much easier to tell a meaningful problem story because we can truly pull on people's heartstrings, because they can imagine themselves either being in that situation now, happening in the future, someone they love being in that situation, someone they care about. My very first startup client back in 2008 was a cardiothoracic surgeon who had created 2 medical devices. And he's one of the reasons that brought me over to working with startups, because I was working initially on his presentations for he was the head of the Cardiothoracic and Cardiology Association of Israel at the time. And one of his devices enabled you know, when the arteries are harmed and blood is gushing out everywhere, a tourniquet isn't going to help. And you, as fast as possible, have to try to get the fluids back in. So his inspiration for this was actually Rabin shooting. And the distance between Rabin Square and Ichilov Hospital is walkable. But by the time they got him from there to the hospital, he had lost the crucial 2 liters of blood. By the way, I remember this pitch, and we're talking back then, because it's such a profound story and we remember these stories. So he had lost the crucial 2 liters. It was too late to try to, and nothing had been done in the ambulance on the way to stop the bleeding from happening. And when he saw that, that motivated him, as someone who knew surgery and also did bypasses, to be able to use it for that, to create this simple device called a sealer and a filler. It's like a little umbrella that seals up major wounds and enables fast pressure of getting the fluids in. So a powerful story can really stick with people and resonate. Use the advantage of the emotional connection. And when we gave those pitches, there wasn't an eye in the room that wasn't tearing up, thinking about what could have been. All right, so we've done our problem, we've done our story, hopefully we've grabbed them, we've made them resonate. Now we want to tell them how we are solving this. And we get from the why to the how. You want to create your simple solution statement. It's anything but simple to write. One sentence that says what you do so anyone can get it, whether they have a degree in medicine, computer science, cryptography, or whatever. We do X for Y by Z. Okay? That's your sentence, and that's how it should be structured out. You can move around the X and the Y and the Z and very simply explain what you do. Are you a solution, a technology, a device, a platform? The platform is just something that it might enable several different solutions to sit on it. So you want to kind of decide what it is that you're doing. And then as fast as possible, you want to move to an impressive demo. We are very visual creatures. We need the visuals to believe it. Steve Jobs could have stood around for an hour talking about the iPad, but the minute he showed it, okay, we got it. It's like a very big phone with a very, very big screen. So we want to have a demo. It can be, if it's a medical device, you probably have some kind of a demo that's a mock-up of it that can show in a 3D rendering or a video what it will look like so they can imagine it. You can show screenshots of mock-ups. You can show, walk them through a user story. That's something that I really like to do, a user story when it's, especially when it's a field that they don't understand that much, like a DevOps solution. Or I had a client last week and I learned for the first time what a mainframe is and what ZOS means. I had never encountered that because I had absolutely zero reason to. So most investors, I said to them, well, the investors know what a mainframe is? And she said only if they've, worked in cyber or they've worked in developing major infrastructural programs or, for companies that are third-party vendors on that. So we have to set the stage a little bit. I saw that Yael is here, and recently I worked with their company, and I think we talked about some investors being very savvy. They're working on a solution for clinical trial efficiency. And some investors will know, very savvy, know exactly what it means. You can just jump right in. Some investors need a level set. So have a slide that gives them the background of what this means. How does it usually work with a clinical trial today? And then if you don't need it and they say move on, skip it. But the demo is crucial. So walk them through a user story of an as if. Here's how it will work. So-and-so is assigned to a clinical trial. And then, so talk about the different steps they go through. Lead us on the user journey. If you can show how you really understand your customers' needs and you know how to solve them, then that's very impressive to investors, because then they know that you know your customers inside and out. So I oftentimes, if you have, you're already working with a customer, a design partner, a pilot, start off when you're talking about the problem with their story. their life before you. What were they struggling with? What was wrong? What solutions had they tried? A quote saying, you know, we were losing thousands of dollars a day, and opportunities were being left on the table. And, you know, so what was their struggle? Then when you come to the demo part, you can talk about how life is better for them now. Go through the onboarding and the implementation, the results, testimonials, again, stickiness if you can show, and then you can show another 1 or 2 shorter use cases. This can be a real use case, and this can also be an as-if use case. You can walk us through a simulation of what will be, especially if you're not yet working with clients or with patients, and that's fine. But through your story, you're doing 2 things. One, you're using a story that they can resonate with and they can imagine themselves or someone else using it. 2, you're showing off your killer features without just listing them out. You're showing them and they come to life. And 3, if you actually have a customer working on it, you're upping your credibility. Questions about the problem, solution, demo, or anything else we discussed? These are probably the most crucial parts of your presentation, being able to get them that far. Amos, you want to say something? Unmute yourself if you want to talk. You can unmute, just here. There we go. Hi. Oh, wait, he's not. Let me see. Either you unmute or Sharon can unmute you. I don't have the controls. Just hit. There you go. Oh, I think you guys are. Now you're on. Hi.
Yeah, so by what we've covered so far in terms of numbers of slides, how many slides would you think thus far?
Okay, so let's cut.
It's also a question that we have now in the chat, so it's about the number of slides and the length of that part.
Okay, so I want you guys not to be so worried about the length of the presentation. We'll talk about slides a little bit later on, and I have some guidelines for you there. Let's see what we've had so far. So I'll give you a little clue into the future. It's one big idea per slide, and I'll go into that a little bit later. So we did our opening slide where we talked about our vision statement. If you need the brag slide, the brag slide. If the team is credible, put them right at the beginning. And then we probably have a slide about the problem, maybe 2. Sometimes segueing from the problem to the solution, we'll have a current solutions are great, but they're just not doing A, B, C, and D. So that might be 5. Then we have the simple solution statement and a demo slide or video. It might be over several. So, and then a use case or 2. So we might be at 7, 8 slides at this point. And that's fine. Please don't worry.
Right.
Usually the average number of slides that I create for an investor deck are between 15 and 25, depending on if you show the full demo or not. You're not going to be penalized for number of slides if the slides are readable and don't want to kill them with overdosing on bullets. Okay.
Great.
Other questions?
There is another question here that we have from Offer regarding the video, either a video animation. You mentioned that it's good to show a demo, but now we're talking about virtual presentation, so it's slightly hard. Well, I don't know if it's slightly, but it's harder to, you can't just pass something around. So maybe can you elaborate about either have a demo through the camera or just run a short few seconds video?
So I would not do a live demo. Live demos have a way of dying if you can show something that you've pre-prepared. And then if they say, can we actually see the system, or can we actually see it, go and show it to them. In terms of you are narrating or having the video show it, I would put it on mute and you talk them through it. They're listening to you. You're much more compelling than someone who's done the voiceover. They want to hear your explaining through it. Deborah, in terms of numbers, it could be for round A and it could be for more. Round A has more stats and data and metrics there. So those often will be though in the appendix. So the numbers can go for either. You want though, here's another important thing with those testimonials, let your customers be your champion. They're going to want to speak to them anyway. Get those testimonials. They are worth their weight in gold. Now, if you haven't done your brag slide at the beginning, this is a great part. Just you're at the cusp of your third act, your third bucket, the business. This is a good place to give them your current status, where you're at. Are you in preclinical trials? Where you're at with IP, where you're at with engineering, where you're at with partnerships, where you're at with onboarding other medical professionals as experts. That's where you give it. Then there's three main things I want you to talk about in your business side. Differentiation, what truly sets you apart from your competitors. And I cannot stress enough, we don't ever want to say anything mean, bad, or divisive about our competitors, because you never know who worked with them, who has some kind of connection to them. And in Silicon Valley, if you speak negatively, then it's a big signal of, wonder what they're saying about me behind my back. So we always want to keep it very pleasant, smile on the surface, at least very, it's play the game. It's very opposite of what we're used to being like as Israelis. And you might say, yeah, but they really appreciate the candor. I'm like, yeah, they appreciate the candor, but let them get to know you first. Let them get through that initial kind of, don't put all our Israeli chispus up front. Make it, let them get to know you little by little, doses of it. Think of yourself as a fine whiskey. You don't want to just chug the entire bottle at once. Sip it. Competitive landscape. Let's talk about that. Do not put a slide like that. Don't make people work to try to understand what it is that you're different. And I see these all the time, and I want to die when I see them. So what should we show? All right, how about the XY, the magic quadrant? Some investors say they hate it. Some investors say they love it. My experience is if it's not there, they don't understand why it's not there. If you try to be smart and put yourself at the bottom left, they don't quite know how to do it. So what I can say is make your X and your Y meaningful. All right, what are your two biggest differentiators? And put in your main competitors that are the big players and the VC-backed players. What about this one? They love it. They love the IDC MarketScape. If you can show some hubris on how you're going to get to where they are, it's a little bit more complex to do. You've got a little explaining, but at least it maps it out, and they can kind of see where you are and where you intend to be. Here's another way that investors have said they like it, just simply laying out the logos. You can do this on a continuum. If there's some that are like that and some that are like that, and we're somewhere in the middle. We do both. So this can work well, just showing the main competitors' logos and talk them through it. This is my favorite, the petal diagram. If you are in an industry where you touch on many different solutions, like Slack, it's chat, it's collaboration, it's sharing, it's communication, it's task management, then it's great because it's like the all-in-one. You're right in the middle. Some of these competitors can become competitors, and it really works nicely. You don't have to have 5 petals. It could be 3, it could be 6, but it's a really great way of showing where you're at. All you want to show is with visuals, there's an instant understanding, and we're still capable of listening to you. So you want to show as many visuals as you can, especially when we're not in the room with them, because our job is much harder. So the more visual, the better and the clearer the understanding, and the more we can grab their attention. So as I said, don't dismiss your competition, super important. Another thing, so we've had differentiation, monetization. How are you making money, or how do you intend to make money? Your main business model, and also your other potential revenue streams. So with medical devices, it's often razor blades, where the device will either be given or very inexpensive, and then the replaceables, the disposables will be the cost. That might be a subscription. You might have additional service support, so a monthly subscription. So there's a lot of different ways to show it. Just, I know it can shift too, but they want to see that you have the direction. And the third, opportunization. I know that's not a real word, but it rhymes with differentiation and monetization, so it's easier to remember. And this, to me, is the silver bullet slide. And this is one of my best secrets that I'm giving you now, especially now. What are the trends and opportunities happening now that make you a very timely investment? It could be regulatory changes. It could be the pandemic. It can be M&A or major investments in potential competitors, whatever it is that shows. And if it's that timely, you might want to put it up when you talk about the problem and not wait for it to be here. But I usually try to find 3 different trends that address it. This is the FOMO slide. Investors do not want to feel like they missed the train on the next big thing. You want them to be thinking, oh my gosh, if I don't get on this now, somebody else is, and I'm going to be kicking myself 5 years from now. So give them that sense of urgency. Peleg, did you want to say something? I saw that you unmuted. Oh, he's just connecting to audio. Okay, that's fine. Yes, Amos, you have a question? Unmute.
I muted.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So can you give examples of how you create urgency?
Yes. So let me think of recent client, everything's blending together. Okay, so I'm working with a company now that's an ed tech company, and they have developed a method that's been used as a game for years, and now they're creating the digital format of it that teaches kids to read in the way that should have been used in schools, and studies show this. So what's the urgency now? Who has kids learning from home? Yeah. Are you happy with the tools? Somewhat. Some are not. So we're experiencing now that the remote learning tools, the edutech tools, are not really cutting it for independent learning. So if they can show that this is truly an urgency that can be met now, and there's a call for it, then that's something that can make it urgent now. I worked with another company last week that they have a smart stethoscope and a smart at-home diagnostic device. It could be, one is for clinicians and one is for at-home use, and it takes all vital signs at once. And they actually, so up until now that's been the pitch, but they actually can measure the sounds of the lungs in a much more deep and profound way that's missed by the human ear, even with the stethoscope. And they're actually doing tests now. They're gathering all this data from COVID patients to see if they actually could hear what corona sounds like. So suddenly there's an urgency there that wasn't there, that if they can do a remote diagnostic tool without people having to even come in and hear, yes, this is corona, no, this is not, without the horribly invasive testing, this is a huge win. So that is definite urgency.
Yes, and if I'm looking at what you guys are doing, so obviously now with the corona and the fact that people feel reluctant to, go to the hospitals, and you have relatively a cheap wearable device, and especially now with the latest, I think it was this week, that was a research that announced that it relates stroke and heart failures to corona, and this is really up your alley. This is exactly what you guys are doing.
So if you can show and you can twist your problem story and then the urgency story into, this is something that will be able, because I mean, this corona's not going anywhere. It's going to be with us for a while, and others like it. And we're going to have to find testing, we're going to have to find treatment, and we're going to have to find vaccinations. If you can show that you are going to be able to aid one or more of those, heck yeah, it's urgent. And there's a lot. I just spoke to, I don't know if you're familiar with Amidyar's fund, and he was one of the original partners at eBay. And they've shifted all their resources to either funding current portfolio companies or corona-related solutions. So there's a lot of calls out there for funding corona-related solutions. So definitely keep your fingers on that pulse. So these are the things that I personally think are going to be big opportunities. And if you can show that you are going to be able to do any of these 5, and there's probably more, I mean, also directly treatment to corona, then you really want to put yourself front and center. And these are the needs that have popped up now. If you didn't put your team at the beginning, this is a good place to put the team. And you want to stress their assets. Why are they the ones? Credibility, their background, the places they worked at, their know-how and their knowledge. Future directions. We're into our 4th act here. This is going to be potential new markets, new features, new products, things that will make this an even bigger opportunity. What you have now might be the first step or the MVP in a much bigger solution. And this is the time to get them excited. Link it to your vision statement, link it to your why, and show how eventually this suite of products or solutions are going to meet that vision. By the way, don't worry if you miss a slide. I will make sure you guys have access to the slides. I'll send them to Shalon afterwards to send out to you all. Then the ask, please be specific. How much are you seeking? Don't give them a range. What will you use it for? Those are just, some examples of allocations. And what's your round objective? How long will it last you? Don't raise for less than 18 months unless it's a bridge loan, because they don't want to see you out in 6 months from now fundraising again. How long is the runway, and what will be your KPIs at the end? Where will you be in terms of pilots, customers, MRR, users, geos, markets? Look forward and work backwards. What you need to understand is when they're writing a check now, they're on the hook for the next round. Unless your investor only invests in early and seed, and that's a known thing. If they don't invest in your next round, that's a very bad signal for other investors. So they need to know that you're going to be able to hit these KPIs so that they can join the next round and find the best investors for you. Okay, so that is the investor deck. I have some more things, but I'd like to pause now and do some practice. So who would like to attempt to give me their elevator pitch and get some on-the-spot coaching from me? Not everyone at once.
I'd love to.
Okay, Soma, great. Would you like to put your video on so we can see your face, or are you?
I would like to have my presentation on. If it's
Actually,
okay.
no, we're not going to do it. It's going to take us too long logistically. So just talk us through the story, especially the problem solution part.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Can we have your video on?
Well, sure. Let me just.
Okay. We're going to do these as like quick little things because I'd like to do several of them. And everybody that's not presenting, listen, because they could be doing the same good things and they could be making the same mistakes as you. So listen in.
Do you see me?
Yes, we do. Hi,
Hi,
Tomer.
Okay. Yeah, I need to comb my hair. So I have this slide showing a person in the supermarket, and the text is, lately, none of us even want to go to the supermarket. Now imagine the ICU nurse that has to go into the quarantine unit and into the overwhelmed ICU you see on the news. And she is having the hovering risk of infection, massive shortage of nurses and supplies. And imagine she's going in there once every hour or less, but not to treat anyone, only to manually monitor her many patients, to do a routine and repeating task that should have been automated long ago. We are Sereno, are doing just that, automating the last metric still measured by hand in both quarantine units and the regular ICUs worldwide, offering remote zero-contact monitoring for kidney function, fluid balance for all ICUs, with all its 14 million yearly patients.
Great, great. So I have a feeling that before Corona, your story at the beginning was a little bit different. Now you've
Yeah,
augmented it too much. Great. So that's a great example of having made it work. Let me see how I would augment that. So yes, people don't want to even go to the supermarket. Imagine, just get to the point a little faster. So imagine a nurse that has to go in, I would move that up a little bit, that has to go in to see patients at least 3 times during her shift, to monitor vital signs, to check in on them, and each time increase her risk. This is unfathomable that we don't have a contactless way of monitoring at this point, because ICUs are still using, and you can show, the devices that they're using. It's still not monitored. Some things are monitored remotely, others are not. It's time to completely change the way that we monitor vital signs. Contactless, safe, and I'm sure it's also about when deterioration happens, we know faster. Is it a continuous monitoring?
Exactly.
So, okay, so if that is even more for Corona, so if it was able to monitor a Corona patient and see if there was deterioration, breathing, that that we know right away, and we know when people need to be moved into an escalation. Great.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Excellent. Okay, who's
Thank you.
next? Yes, come on, guys. This is an opportunity. Nobody's gonna steal your IP. We're all friends here. Okay, let me see if I know any names here so I can call some names out.
You want to put someone on the spot?
I'm gonna see if I know if there's anyone here that I could put on the spot. I see some first names. I don't know. Yeah, Ian, if you're there, you want to give it a go?
Yeah,
I'll go ahead.
Amos
Oh,
wants
Amos.
to try.
Okay, Amos. There you go. All right.
Although I haven't prepared an elbow speech, again.
Nobody did. Nobody
yeah,
did this. On the
we've
spot, you're not being judged.
We've shifted our technology to COVID because the event that we are all looking for is the COVID event, pitching event on Monday. So basically, I'll do it. I'll do it. Okay.
Go.
So yeah. So yeah, during COVID times, people just don't go to hospitals. They don't visit the clinics, and they are away from the system. And from our experience and from what we hear, many of the cardiology wards and inpatients and outpatients are empty. There's no one there. No one is coming, and people are deteriorating. So imagine you had a wearable that not only monitors these patients, but also delivers first aid therapy. So Cardiac Care is the world's first closed loop system that actually monitors vital signs, but also delivers therapy by, it's called the neuromodulation or nerve stimulation, where we're affecting the central nervous system to affect the heart. The way we do that is basically by non-invasively stimulating the wrist. We're biohacking the central nervous system from the wrist to the neck, and we're affecting brain-heart communications.
Amazing.
So imagine that all these people that during COVID times do not come to the clinic were monitored and treated to prevent deterioration. And if not, they were, and if we could not treat them, we could alert their physicians that they're deteriorating when they need to go to the hospital.
Excellent. Excellent. Really great. I just tweaked the story slightly, make it a little bit more dramatic, add some numbers in. And we can say, so over the past month and a half, hospitals have given priority to anyone that is potential COVID and try to either cancel, reschedule, or push off anyone that's not urgent. Obviously, anyone that's suffering from a cardiac condition does not want to put themselves at risk to go in to be monitored, yet they are at risk for a lot more if they're not monitored. And you can say there's over 57 million patients worldwide that have some degree of it. And in normal days, in order to see if there's deterioration, they have to go in and have an echocardiogram, or they have to do this, or they have to do this, which is invasive, which it takes time, and oftentimes is missed in the best of times. It's time to give remote monitoring and first aid on the spot. And we have biohacked the nervous system in order to enable people to do that anywhere.
Right.
Okay, don't be afraid to use a little bit of drama and put the numbers in there, especially when it's like a pitch competition. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Rami, you next?
Yes. How did you guess? Hey, how are you?
Just a wild guess. Hi.
Okay. I'm heading Accento Medical. Accento knows to defeat Alzheimer's and dementia. We've done this with several thousand cases.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, it can even hit people that are 65 or 70 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order to accelerate and get it out in the world, we are adopting artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence will allow us to take away the treatment center's place in this whole thing and let people being treated where they live. They don't have to go to any clinic, to get any hospital. All over the world, doctors and clinicians will be able to attend them where they live and give them the needed treatment and assessment. In the world, you're talking about a problem of 50 to 60 million people right now, and it's increasing by 5 to 8 million people every year. And today, there's no cure. No cure. We know to cure.
What's the differentiation between this and like a telemedicine? Is it a device that people will have at home that will enable it?
No, it's a treatment method, and it's a doctor who does the treatment. But as of today, you need to go to the doctor and go through a lot of different tests. Now the doctor will be able to go to you or to do it in your setting, if you're in an elderly home or a protected area, etc.
So it's not a device, it's a method. Does the doctor have to be in the room, or is this also
digital
remote?
health?
Digital health, okay. Okay.
It's digital health. So it can be done remotely and also non-remotely.
Okay, and this is AI enabled. So I would, here in this case, you need to do your differentiation right away from the get-go and say, you know, we've come a long way with digital health. Telemedicine is great. We can now see doctors for certain things online, but how much can they actually treat from afar? They can diagnose, they can write you a prescription, they can say, come in, we need further treatment. But what if we could take that one step further and have it almost like they were in the room with you, being able to treat you without actually being there, taking telemedicine.
It sounds terrific, but I've got to tell you, the differentiator is that we know to treat. And today there's no treatment.
That's what I said. So telemedicine.
Oh, but we don't need, it's not because of AI, it's because of the method.
Okay, so that's fine. So don't say, so now thanks to our method, they'll be able to treat. Imagine taking telemedicine one step further or one step closer. Okay. So, but differentiate the telemedicine, because right away right away when you're saying it, I'm like, oh, is this just telemedicine? How is this different? So we need to get the fact that telemedicine is there, but there's only so much that could be done through a video without having the equipment. And again, you can also make that more corona driven in the fact that telemedicine visits have increased by 87% since corona was introduced. And it's great because it saved parents trips taking their kids to the doctor for a cold, and it's saved elderly from having it, but there's only so much that can be done. And the vulnerable populations that we're trying to keep away now, and in the best of times, are very limited. But now we have the opportunity, it's almost like reaching through the screen and being able to give the magic touch of a physician, thanks to your company. I didn't hear the name, but okay.
Okay.
Good.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. Okay, who's next? We have time for another few of these. Count to 5.
Anybody else would like to try? Give us your pitch and see if it works with people who don't know your company.
Okay, so we'll move on, and if anybody changes their mind, we might have some time at the end to do another few of these. Thank you to those that. Oh, yes.
I don't mind doing this. I'm think maybe the less experienced one. I usually don't do the pitches.
Don't apologize.
The CEO.
Good for you for trying it.
Yeah. Okay. So we are Genix, and we are developing a platform to enable genetic lab, small to medium ones all over the world, to really come together as a force and forming a secure and seamless biobank to enable both the labs, agents, and data security, because they are dealing with which is a highly identifiable one and should be stored according to all the strict regulatory elements. And on the other end, when we are dealing with this aggregated big genetic, this is the true life, the next leap in medicine, the personalization of treatment. Now, our biggest, we knew what we are doing customer interviews with big pharma. They're in the market for this. This COVID-19 times really put an emphasis on that, as it became the in the Israeli National Consortium.
We're having trouble hearing you. you keep kind of cutting in and out.
You're cutting, yeah.
Ofer, you're cutting in and out. Let me ask you a few questions for clarity, and then hopefully we'll hear you a little bit better. What is the big problem that you guys are solving? You kind of went into the solution, and I missed what the need was.
So there is a huge lack in diverse and high quality genetic data for research institutes and pharma companies to drive personalized medicine research. And on the genetic labs, and if you go and do a genetic test for cancer or whatever, and have huge deficits in IT measures to store the data over time and share the data with your customers. It's done very old school wise, and we are offering a cloud-based, seamless, very secure platform to as an end-to-end solution, storage to analysis to reporting.
Is this genetic data that was gathered through home kits, through genetic testing? How is the data being gathered today?
Oh, and so this is the differentiation point between us and other companies like 23andMe that provide snippets of the genome. This is medical grade data. So this is the true force of driving genetic research, or through like the next generation of innovation in diagnostics and therapeutics.
Okay. Is there any way that we, right now, with the COVID-19 situation, this is something that if we had the genetic data, it could have helped speed things along?
So the major thing is that Genix became the centerpiece in the Israeli consortium for research of genetic susceptibility and all kind of variants that are related to treatment response, to diagnostics, and we really put together the major genetic facilities in Israel, from Ichilov, Hadassah, and Rambam.
Right. Okay. So these days I would lead in with that. And I would say, can you imagine that? So Corona is called novel because it's new. We didn't see it coming. We had never seen anything like it. But just imagine that the minute it landed, we were able to map the genetics, tie in and understand much faster how to treat it. Everybody's scrambling for solutions. Everybody's scrambling for treatment. Everybody's scrambling for vaccination because we know it's going nowhere. And if we had access to the right genetic data, it might speed things along. The problem is genetic data that's gathered today is done very fragmented, very haphazardly, very old school. There's no access cross. It's a big security issue. And we are taking the genetic data and updating it to meet these times when we need it the most, and then go into the solution and how it works. And also say we've also been chosen to be on the task force. That's a big thing.
Noted. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so let's move on, and then at the end we might have some time for another one of these. Slides. Again, visuals count. Your slides are a representation of your product and your company. You want to make both look great. There's some very inexpensive ways to make your slides look better if you can't afford to hire a designer, which you should. But you've got Canva, Slidebean, Slidebody, Maze, Haiku Deck, very simple, easy, no technical skills needed no design skills needed to put them together. Going back to the question about how many slides we should have. So as I said, it's one big idea per slide. I don't want you making your listeners want to commit suicide. And when you've got too many bullets, that is a big risk. Now, the thing is also, you actually compete with your own words. If you are presenting and you have a lot on the slide, people are reading. Now, there's 3 different ways that we take in information: through our visual channel, our auditory channel, and our kinesthetic channel. When we read, it's the auditory channel, the same as when we listen. It's not the visual. The visual is the camera, but it decodes the language in our brain. So if we're reading, we're not listening unless you're reading word for word what's on your slide, which you shouldn't be doing anyway. Now, I'm not talking about the send out version. You could have a send out version that has more text on it, And that's fine, but don't make that the version that you're presenting with. Don't compete with your own words. So it's one big idea per slide, and it's the one big idea that grandma could understand, or grandpa. I am definitely not being anti-feminist here, or your parents, or anyone involved. As Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And I came up with a grandma story many years ago when I was teaching a group of hardware engineers at Intel how to give a coherent presentation, and someone came up with this and basically was going, well, the multi 1 gig LAN backbone, the 10-port 1 gig BMAC, and the SPI 4P2 slot 1 processor is interspliced from the backplane to the CSI-XL2 switch, like going through every single data point. So I let him go for a few minutes, and then I said, thank you, that was nice. By the way, if you're not clear, when an American says, thank you, that was nice, they don't really mean it. And they also thank you, that was interesting, they don't mean it. And in Silicon Valley, you might hear things like great, amazing, excellent, totally cool, and they still don't mean it. So take that at face value. Anyway, so we went through this a bit, and I was like, can you explain to me what this means? He looked at me like, duh, like, how is this not clear? And he was like, well, the multi 1 gig LAN backbone, like really slow. And that still wasn't working, surprise. And I said, okay, could you explain this to me in a way that my grandmother would understand? He's like, really excited. He's like, you mean your grandmother's an engineer? And I had to disappoint him. And yeah, Rami's laughing. He must be an engineer. That's an engineer joke. And I had to apologize on my dear departed grandmother's behalf that they were not engineers. But the whole point is, most people we talk to are not necessarily engineers, but we need to be able to explain it simply. And finally, after some attempts, we got it. That all this dude was trying to say was, grandma, we're doing much more in much less space. Once upon a time, grandma, computers took up entire rooms. They were so big. Today, your phone is like a bazillion times faster and a bazillion times smaller than those big clunky computers. Kind of like your kitchen, grandma. You could cook for 20 people in a teeny tiny kitchen. How cool is that? So it's really all about them. It's not dumbing down what you do. It's elevating your audience. Just like I said, have a version for lay people and have a version for experts so that you know who you're talking to. If you're talking to the academia, then you can talk in a very high level thing. But you like, I mean, the startup I was telling you about with the cardiothoracic surgeon, the first version of their deck, when I got it, looked like it had been pages pulled out of a medical journal. And you don't want to do that for people that are not doctors or physicians. Okay, I see we had a question in the chat. Share a couple of designers. Yes, I will be happy to, you can email me at the end and I'll be happy to connect you. I don't know 24 slides, Tomar, but we'll have to check into that as well. Okay, moving on. Know your audience's questions and answer them ahead. This is so incredibly important. Now, if you've done your work right and you've created in the flow, you've already answered a lot of the main questions. You can go to my website, donnagriffit.com, and under resources, I've compiled a list of over 100 of the questions that investors ask. So you can borrow questions from there, and just in the same way you would review your pitch before a pitch competition or before a meeting, review and make answers for those questions so you're ready. If they ask a question you don't have an answer to, don't try to make it up. Say, excellent question, I don't have all the data. Can I get back to you with this? Gives you a good excuse to continue the conversation. So please do.
I have a question from someone regarding the Q&A. What would be your advice? Should we allow questions throughout the presentation or wait until
in your pitch competition?
Well, if it's a pitch competition or something which is pre-organized, then the organizers will let you know.
Right.
If we have questions throughout.
Meeting,
but yeah, in a meeting in general.
Okay, you definitely don't want to shut an investor up and say, I'll take questions at the end. If they're asking questions, they're interested. And if they're asking difficult questions, they're also testing you to see how you will answer. So first of all, don't get defensive. It's very important. It's one of their ways of seeing how you respond to a little heat. If they ask a question and you know you're getting into it later, say, excellent question. Now you can either skip to that slide and go there, or you can say, the short answer is this. In 2 slides, I'm actually going to get to the longer. They might say, well, can you show it to me now? Go with what they want. You might have to completely abandon your slides, skip around. That's fine. if you're familiar enough with your story, you'll be able to do skipping and not get phased. You want to master this so that you know your way around like the back of your hand.
Great, thank you. So again, if it's a pitch competition or something which is pre-organized, ask the organizers what the rules are, but what you just explained, this is for a regular pitch meeting, either in person or virtual. Thanks,
Yep.
Donna.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's the link. You'll get these slides, so that's the link to my site. In remote presenting, your voice matters more. Your body's not there. Your voice is the way that you're going to create trust, that you're going to grab their attention. And here's a nice little exercise you can try at home. Try recording your usual voice. You can either do a video or you can just do regular. Then do some kind of outrageous, crazy home shopping network, over-the-top car salesman voice that totally seems over the top for you. And then listen. Now, how bored were you by your normal voice? And how bad did you think the outrageous voice? You might be surprised that what you thought was totally over the top was actually just more energy. And then find somewhere in the middle and modulate. Once you hear it, it's much easier to fix it. Don't be shocked by the sound of your voice if you haven't heard your voice before. And it's important to listen and to record yourself. Another thing I want to say about remote meetings, stand up, get dressed, get that energy in there. If you're sitting there in your pajamas and you know, kind of slumped down, that energy throws through. If you have a pitch competition, arrange it so you have a standing desk and give us that energy. When you stand, it's different and it carries through. But even if you're sitting, please wear the pants, do the whole nine. You saw the, yes, you saw the reporter on Good Morning America the other day that didn't realize that he wasn't wearing pants. That he knew, but that would be in the shot. He was wearing a suit on the top and no pants, so definitely do that. Fear, it's very common to get nervous before big presentations, but the beauty of it is, if you're getting butterflies in your stomach, it could mean nerves and it could mean excitement. Same exact thing. The difference is the branding we give it. So if you're nervous before a presentation, if you're feeling butterflies, instead of saying, oh my God, I'm so nervous, and then those butterflies, they get really aggressive and they'll like fly up and block your breath and you can't breathe and you're like falling apart. Instead say, ooh, butterflies. I must really be excited. What a great opportunity. This is cool. And then those butterflies, ooh, they get excited. They put on their Burning Man clothes and they start popping shots of Van Gogh and doing some Tiesto dancing, and they fly and take you with them. The minute you don't block them down, they're the energy you need. And you need that energy now more than ever. On remote, you need more energy to carry through, because when you're in a room with people, you get their energy feedback. And that gives you energy. Now you're just staring at screens. So you need to work a little harder. And then fear becomes face everything and recover. So most likely you're not going to die up there. It's going to be fine. It's going to actually be great. So walk in with that feeling, which leads to my last point of the day. Come in at your best. Everybody's going through crappy times. Everybody's got kids screaming outside the room, or a dog, or something happening. And, you know, we get it. But don't let that weigh on you. Don't let the fact that, you know, you're nervous about the future of your company. It's understandable. They can smell desperation from a mile away. Leave everything outside. Be in there at your best, at your brightest, at your menchiest, at your likableness, and really just bring it, because there's no second chance for a first impression. And that's just really what you want to give them. So before we wrap up and take some more questions, I just want to end with a quote. I like ending presentations with quotes because I think it's really powerful. Steve Jobs, I love Le Shalom, said, I'm convinced that about half of what separates the successful entrepreneurs from the non-successful ones is pure perseverance. Now, most of you being medical device, I think you know that more than other entrepreneurs do. And let's think of this as a blip in the road, a bump in the road, and we're going to get through it even better and stronger. And it's amazing to have organizations like CICC that are there to really give you opportunities to grow and thrive from this. So just as another little opportunity, CICC and I also have partnered. They have a perks coupon special offers page. They have several offers, and I have 2 there. So there's a 25% discount for CICC for any sessions with me, and also any workshops for your organizations. And I am giving remote workshops now. There's 15% off. So there's a few different deals there, and feel free to reach out through those codes. It's very easy to just click on and redeem it. So there's going to be a link at the bottom here to get, and you can also get there just through the CICC site. So that's me.
We have another question.
Absolutely.
Oh.
I'm going to answer questions. I'm going to answer questions now, but just to let you know, this is the way to stay in touch with me. Email, website. I've got a lot of great resources there. LinkedIn, Twitter, blog. So I'm here for you to get through this and other times. Investor pitches, sales decks, website content, speeches, you name it, and we will get you there. Thank you, everyone, and I'm happy to take a few more questions. Yes, another question, Sharon?
Okay, so there is a question was sent to me privately, but really, if you can summarize in 3 points, what will be the most important or difference between having a formal face-to-face presentation versus a virtual?
So what's the question in it?
What are the 3 points differences between a face-to-face to a virtual?
Oh gosh, so much more. I mean, look, when we're in the room with someone, there's a special kind of chemistry that happens. I'm sure that the medical community in here could explain the actual chemistry, but we're used to having a body there to create trust. That is very limited through a screen. So voice matters more, your visuals matter more, and your message matters more. You need to tell a story. You need to keep it simple, succinct. You need to get interaction if you can. If we're presenting to people, stop, get their input, ask very directed questions. Otherwise, you're going to lose them, and your voice has to be just much more pizzazzy and energetic. You can also, you can lean in, and all of a sudden that looks a little, you don't want to get too close, otherwise it looks like you're peeking in from a peephole. And you can go back, you can use your hands. I've been using my hands throughout this. You're really only seeing my face and my hands, but that does add to the energy. So treat it like a face-to-face meeting, only amped up.
Okay, thank you. We have last question before our time is up. There is a question here from Offer. What if the CEO is not a presenter, but rather one of the co-founders? I know sometimes, especially for Israelis, it's a matter of language, English, confidence, and so on. What will be an issue in terms of the investors?
So yeah, generally they do want to see the CEO present. However, yes, with Israelis, with people in general, the CEO is not always the best presenter, and it's fine, especially at pitch competitions, to have the best presenter up there. In meetings, I would say divide it up so that the CEO is talking some, because they need to show that they can lead the business. Maybe let the story piece be told by the most dramatic. And now, when I was working with the professor of cardiothoracic surgery, I actually went with him to an angel conference in New York and presented on his behalf, both his devices, because he was invited. And that was okay because he was very senior, and he's an incredible clinician, an incredible surgeon. It was a struggle for him to be out and being captivated in front of a group. So it's okay, as long as the person in charge can really give the answers needed.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, Benny is asking, question on Q&A. How about asking other members of the team to answer? Would you recommend the presenters to, if there is more than one presenter in the rooms, say, I know I did it in the past, telling the technical people, oh, why don't you answer this since this is their domain? What would you recommend?
Absolutely. So if it's a pitch competition, I try to stick to one person presenting, and then if there's Q&A, you can have your partners come up. If it's an actual investor meeting, you can divide up the sections, either have one person leading, and then maybe when you get to the technical piece or you get to the product, your CTO can present. You just all have to be at the same level of proficiency. And if there are questions that the CTO can answer better, definitely. They're also looking at how you harmonize together. Are you talking over each other? Are you arguing? You never want them to see that, because I think partner relations is one of the things that investments will, you know, or companies will close with. So you definitely want to show that. And that's fine if multiple people.
Entrepreneurs have to decide well in advance who's going to answer what type of questions, and exactly to show the depth in the company and not just the presenter.
Yeah, so have it harmonized, put egos aside. This is not about showing up. This is about showing the company at its best. Absolutely, Benjamin. Thank you.
Great presentation, Donna.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, guys, so we are exactly at 11:30.
Yes.
Or 9:30 Israel, or 2:30 New York. So we will wrap up here. Thank you so much for being here. Good luck through this time. I really hope to hear some great success stories coming out of this horrible situation. And please keep us posted, and have a wonderful pitch event with CICC next week.
Thank you, Donna, for giving us all these amazing tips. I know it's very, very helpful for those that are not necessarily in the beginning of their career and just pitching for the first time, but also those that have done it, you know, multiple times. It's really good to get those, you know, fine-tuning elements within our presentations. We have here people with many years of experience and those that do not. I did record this session, and I will send this for the participants so you can go over the slides. If anyone needs the slides from Donna, please reach out.
I'll send you the slides. You can also include that when you send this out to them. So
okay, perfect. And also, as Donna mentioned earlier, we have our Circle of Friends of the CICC. There are also coupons for some discounted services and coaching by Donna. So please feel free to go there and use those coupons for your benefits. And again, if you have any further questions, you had Donna's contact information on the previous slide, so don't hesitate and reach out to her. And good luck if it's the pitch competition, or if it's any other pitch, sales, biz dev activity that you do during those times, and of course in the future. We are here for you, and we'll be happy to help you. So
for all the hard work that you both did putting this together, and for all the amazing things you're doing for these companies, Sharon and Tammy also deserve a big round of applause.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. You take care, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thanks.
Be
Bye-bye.
safe, be well. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
Bye.